So let's say you're like most people and you've been searching for a job. You see a listing and it looks like a great fit, so you submit an application and you hear nothing, which not unusual in this current hellscape we're living in. But then you see that same job listing getting posted over and over and over and over again, and you can see that hundreds, if not thousands of people have applied for this role each time it's been relisted on places like LinkedIn, Indeed, other job boards. And you start to get frustrated because you think, I am so desperately in need of a job, yet it seems like none of these people want to hire anyone who's actually applying. What's wrong with me? Well, it's not you. Ghost job listings absolutely function as part of a broader ecosystem of labor manipulation and regulatory theater. It is a indirect, deniable, structural abuse, which is why it's really hard to pin down and understand. But this is what it looks like. Large employers, especially those with government contracts, development subsidies, or visa access, are required to determine things like active recruitment, labor shortages, their good faith hiring efforts, or what they call job creation intent in workforce development. Now, these requirements show up in a lot of different places. They can show up in workforce development grants they might be getting, state and local economic deals that they've brokered for themselves. H-1B and perm visa processes have these kind of requirements. Being able to get relocation incentives, and sometimes compliance reporting that's tied back to any public funding they might get. So that job posting becomes essentially cheap, low risk evidence to provide to these regulators. So a company may post roles it has absolutely no intention of filling, either at the stated wages or at all, so that they can then later say, well, look, we tried. We couldn't find qualified candidates. The labor market's so tight. We posted this listing 12 times in the last 4 quarters and we still can't fill it. Or look, there's simply no domestic labor force available, and that's why the role is still open. And then that justification is what they use to get support through something else. They might use it to justify outsourcing or visa sponsorship, wage suppression, internal restructuring, and layoffs, or continued access to publicly granted money. The posting and the hiring of a role isn't the payoff for the company. The posting is the paper trail they need to create for regulation. Now, this is especially well documented in the employment based immigration system. Employers are required to test the labor market before sponsoring certain kinds of visas. And that process has been repeatedly criticized outside of politics by labor economists, unions, the Department of Labor's own inspectors general over the years for being easy to game by companies. Jobs can get posted that have super unrealistic requirements, super low wages, or some sort of impossible combination of skills and assets to ensure that no hire is possible while still looking like they're satisfying the formal requirement that they looked for qualified applicants. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's been litigated, audited, and critiqued publicly for decades. You can find a ton of primary source information available about this exact problem. So, again, these companies aren't benefiting from a job posting. They're not benefiting from making you sit through 7 rounds of interviews when they know they're not hiring anyone. It comes down to what that posting unlocks for them in terms of benefits. At the state and local level, that dynamic shifts, but the logic is very similar. Cities and most states will throw obscene amounts of money at corporations in the names of what they call job creation. Running on a platform of economic stability and saying that they're an elected official who created jobs is extremely important, and this is how they do it. Those deals that are made between corporations and local and state governments are often based on projections of phased hiring plans rather than like an immediate headcount. So companies can keep those pipelines for hiring open They can delay hiring by months, or they can just quietly downgrade those roles while still technically complying with those reporting requirements, especially when that enforcement is weak or currently politically inconvenient. Ghost postings help maintain the appearance of momentum, they grease the corporate optics. Then there's labor market signaling function, which is deeply political, even if it's framed as neutral. When job boards get flooded with listings, it sustains the narrative that jobs are plentiful and unemployment is a worker problem, not a wage or power problem. That narrative feeds policy decisions. They tighten benefits, cut aid, justify austerity measures, and then discipline labor. Economists have openly acknowledged that online job postings distort labor market data, yet they're still used by scientists, the government, and the media as signals of demand. Ghost jobs aren't just annoying for you, they produce consent for further bad policy. And then there's like the internal issue. Ghost postings are used to tell overworked employees, don't worry, help is coming. We're trying to hire guys, please be patient with us. Or to justify denying raises because they're hiring at market rates. Or to, even worse, benchmark salaries downward. They can say, well, this is what this role is now currently listed at, and we need to do an equity review to make sure you're not getting paid more than other new hires in the same role because that would be inequitable to them. None of that's going to show up on tax forms. None of that's going to show up in their impact reporting for the year or the glossy reports they put out about their work labor. But it all produces very serious real economic harm. And if you've been struggling to find a job for a year, 2 years, 3 years, that's why. So when people say, oh, companies are using fake job descriptions, they're not exaggerating, and they're not trying to shift that accountability because they can't find work. They are correct. Job postings are being weaponized inside of systems that suppress wages and evade accountability because they intentionally seek to blur the line between compliance and fraud.